Hey, my name is Christian Cummings, and this is After the Session. You're listening to a new episode and new conversation. This one I did with Roy Hendrickson last time I was back in New York at Avatar Studios. A few weeks, actually, before they closed. I was doing a project there.
Which they are now open again?
I suppose so.
Somebody just did a project there.
Yeah, right. I did. I was just there. Is that what you're thinking of, or was someone else?
No. Somebody I saw post that they're doing a recording session there. Someone big posted that they're doing another session there, but obviously not under.
It's been for sale for a couple of years, and for those of you that don't know about Avatar, it used to be another studio called Power Station, and it's a legendary studio. I'm certainly no authority on it, but Roy will tell us a bit about it in this podcast. But yeah, Berkeley College of Music ended up purchasing it, and I think it's reopening as Avatar again. I don't know what's going on, but the good news is that people will be doing sessions there. So I don't think they knew that for sure at the time, but it's great. That room is incredible. So we did an episode with Roy Hendrickson. Roy came up during the Power Station days. He's worked with B.B. King, Missy Elliott, Cheap Trick, P.O.D. I'm looking over this list here. It goes on. Miles Davis. He's the man. He knows his stuff. So enjoy this episode. After the session, a conversation with Roy Hendrickson.
Nobody remembers numbers anymore.
Yeah, it's good.
Wow.
Well, let me hop on the mic here.
Okay.
Roy Hendrickson.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
We are in Studio B at Avatar. Alex is hanging out in the corner watching.
He's laughing at us. Right?
I appreciate you being on the podcast last minute. I'm trying to get a bunch of people in here last minute to
thanks for
hang
reaching
out and
out.
have fun. Have you been in Avatar since it became Avatar? Or were you?
Well, I actually started at Power Station in 1985 as a staffer.
When was Power Station established?
I think it was open for business in 1977. I'm not exactly sure when they started, making it into a studio, but I know 1977. Tony Bon Jovi and
the whole build was it the same layout and everything, or did they ever?
I think they just started with Studio A and then built B and C but they were open for business then.
So Studio A has always been that same monolith of a room.
Yeah,
that's considered A, right?
Yeah, right here next door.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I walked in there earlier yesterday and was just like, "This is insane." It's got to be one of the biggest recording rooms.
How did it feel to you,
States.
the space itself?
A bit overwhelming, I would say, but also very calming. It's very, I don't know, man. That's a good question.
Yeah, it's funny before I ever got a job here, I'd known about Power Station because they had a really, I came from New Mexico, so I moved here in 1985.
To do this?
To try to get a studio gig.
Right.
So I can, learn how to engineer and all that. 22.
Okay.
And I remember getting, I sent a bunch of resumes out. I remember getting some, resumes from Record Plant and Region Sound and Power Station. I thought, no way Power Station is going to respond because they were the most famous place in the East Coast at the time. And they had just that big Power Station record had come out and a bunch of stuff came out of here and everybody just knew who the studio was. And they didn't allow pictures back then.
Right.
There was no pictures allowed because it was Tony didn't want people to replicate this idea. And you should talk to him at some point, one day.
Yeah.
But I always imagined what it looked like, and I finally got in here when I had my first interview going into Studio A, and it was completely different than anything I had ever seen or imagined it was going to be.
Right.
I saw this wood room with the dome and the studio manager at the time was clapping his hands in the room, and I was just I couldn't even think. It was
overwhelming.
Crazy. Yeah.
Was it the same console and everything back then?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
That console had just been installed. That's the second console in there. They bought it new in '83.
So you came in as what was your first?
I came entry level.
So do you remember what your title was?
So we call them production assistants at Power Station Avatar.
Yeah.
So basically, that's where you learn how to get tea and coffee, but you also learn how to be assistant through that.
Right.
Through that phase.
I know you do tech work, or at least you.
Some, yeah. I mean,
I'm seeing boxes around the studio with your name on it.
Yeah.
So you must know something about that stuff.
Yeah, actually, I was interested in that at a very young age, and
right.
I think that's part of why I got attracted to engineering.
Did you study it in school?
No.
Just went for it.
Actually, I started learning. I got involved in a studio in high school.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like an entry-level guy there, more of like an intern, but I was like on every session and everything. And the guy there, it was a 4-track studio in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And the guy there couldn't afford to buy hardly anything. He just bought just enough to make studio. So anytime he needed something, he would build it. He would just like, and then after a while, since I was the sort of intern guy or whatever, he would just draw me something and say, I need this for tomorrow. Can you make this while I'm doing the session? I'm like, okay. So that's kind of how I picked it up. Yeah, so I kind of was interested, but I didn't know what I was doing. But I loved the idea, and I think this is a holdover from the 60s and stuff, or maybe even before that, where engineers kind of knew enough to kind of help make things they didn't have to get them to sessions. So that was really fascinating to me.
Yeah, electrical engineering was definitely the big part of the job.
So
that existed there for a minute.
Yeah, so I'm not
still
sure.
Is, but
I'm not sure anybody got really super trained. I mean, maybe back then, but it was a fun thing for me.
You started
for
there
sure.
and then became an assistant at some point.
Yeah, I became an assistant.
Was there a point? Was there sort of a? Would you say there was like sort of a tipping point moment in your career? Like I notice a lot of engineers and producers are really great, and then they sort of have this project that happens, and then they're working a little more. Not everybody has that, but I've
I mean, there are some things. I mean, my work is so cyclical. It seems like, and then sometimes it feels like it's cyclical, and sometimes random stuff comes out of nowhere, and you're busy for a little while.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I feel like something sort of got me going.
Okay.
To where people were calling all the time.
Right.
I mean, maybe it did, and I didn't notice.
Yeah,
but I kind of felt it's been consistent, but not enough to kind of notice. Oh, this thing came out, and I'm starting to see some activity.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is cyclical. It's unpredictable.
It's unpredictable, very much so. But sometimes, like there is like a sort of a baseline that's kind of a bit cyclical.
Right. Do you feel like it's always been that way?
Yeah.
I have been trying to predict it for my entire time doing this.
Yeah.
And I haven't been doing it as long as you have.
Right.
I've been doing it for a while, and I've never found a pattern.
I haven't either.
Like
and
literally, I'll be like, okay, well, the end of the year, November, holidays are coming around. That's going to get slow. And then it's slow one year, and then the next year it's slow, and then the next year I'm slammed.
Right, and then you can't.
And then the beginning of the year comes around, and I'm slow.
Yep.
And it doesn't make any sense to me.
Right, because you want to try to plan something.
Totally.
To do anything,
yeah.
And it's really difficult. Like I could be doing something then. I don't know.
Totally. Do you? So you do a lot of your work here,
as much as possible. Yeah. I mean, there were more studios in town up until the last number of years, so I was floating around more. But this is the studio that I feel like I'm at home at, and I feel like it sounds the best, and it always has in New York City anyway.
So in terms of tracking rooms, do you have a favorite?
No, actually, I used to think I did, but I think it depends on the project. I might actually cast these rooms depending on what I think the song is like and how many players and even the style of recording.
Right.
If I had something that was more intimate and I knew I could do rhythm section and overdub on top, I've done some great pop stuff in here like that.
Right.
Or if I knew I had to have people together, I might choose the bigger rooms, or it just depends,
Do you mix in the box, or do you mix on the computer?
I've been doing so much mixing in the box the last 3 or 4 years, but I'm actually doing more console mixing the last couple of years than I have in a while. Yeah.
What's your preferred console for mixing?
SSL 4000.
The 4000, the one here? Mm-hmm. It's probably fantastic.
It's pretty young, so it's in really good shape.
Right. Do you use much outboard?
Yeah, lots. Not a crazy amount, but I think a fair amount. Alex is with me on a lot of recent stuff.
Does he use a lot of outboard gear?
Depends.
It depends.
As whatever's needed.
Yeah. It all depends. But
do you? Okay, I got to ask a couple of gear questions.
No, you should. I'm curious. I love hearing what other people like to use.
I told you before. I try to avoid.
Right.
I'm trying to avoid that on the podcast as much as possible because there's a lot of that in the world. But do you have a favorite compressor?
For general purpose, I'll tell you, LA3 is probably high, if not number one on the list.
Did you modify these, or did someone else do that?
No, those were modified by Eddie Evans. He was the first one of the first crew that was here.
Yeah, I mean, if you're listening, there are these LA3As all over the power station, or excuse me, Avatar that have the old power station logo on them. That's right. Have switches on the front, and there's probably, I don't know how many of them are here, but 10.
There's a bunch. There's at least 3 or 4 for every room.
They're awesome,
but they're great.
We used them for some. We just used them for some gain makeup today.
Yeah, they're really great, and I feel like I'm always going to feel like most of the time I don't hear them when I'm doing considerable amount of compression, and I'm just used to them.
What all's on them? They're behind me. I have to turn around.
Oh, those are most of the switches brought out front. There's the high frequency emphasis switch for the side chain, and that's just turned all the way up in the back, and the switch turns it on and off. Because, they have that knob in the back, like the LA3, the LA2s for broadcast emphasis.
So I guess everything's just brought over to the front.
Basically, and the hardwire bypass, which most things don't have usually.
Okay, another thing I got to talk about. Here at Avatar, and I'm guessing Power Station as well, that it's a Pultec studio. When
you know it,
Pultecs everywhere.
There used to be Pultec 24 in every room when it was Power Station.
Okay.
And somehow they got downsized a little bit. But, man, it's hard to find a better equalizer than that.
Yeah, we patched them in. We had all of them going at one point, and we had them. I had them flat, just going. On some stuff. So what about the mods on these?
That's a hardwire bypass.
Okay,
and how that was born was they were 24 in every room, and there was a rack where Alex is sitting here behind the console.
24. Oh my god!
Facing, you could turn around as the engineer and just operate them and just swivel your chair back around.
There were 24, just to clarify, 24
every single
Pultecs in every room.
That's right.
One for every channel on a 24-track tape machine.
And that's where I'm going with this. Okay. So here we're on DL connectors, multi-pin connectors. So Tony and Ed had it. So if you wanted to put the Pultecs on your record path on the way to the 24-track machine, you just patch the whole rack of Pultecs in. And like some people just wanted to run through it without EQ, and they could do that. Yeah. Or those little bypass switches would just take them out completely.
Okay, so if I flip the traditional big switch on there,
it does what you're used to. Yeah.
Okay, so
it's still going through the amplifiers and things.
Right. So you still get that.
Yeah.
And then the tiny little switch that's been added is just straight.
It's like unpatching it. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was the thinking behind it.
This particular model, these are all tube, right? There's no like solid state.
There might be 1 or 2 floating around the building, but they're basically the tube ones that you all know.
I've never gotten a chance to use the solid state.
The solid state, all it is,
but I've heard they're good.
It's just an API op amp and replaces the tube amp.
Or 20.
I think it's a 2520 module and an output transformer or something. But
I've also heard that a lot of the tone in a Pultec isn't actually the tubes, it's the transformers. Do you know much? Do you know much about that?
Man, I really have mixed feelings about it. I think the most important part of the thing for me, excluding overloading them, which is kind of hard to do actually, because of the way they're made, but is the actual passive equalizer itself.
Okay.
To me, like if those are correct, I feel like it has more of what I like than worrying about the amplifiers so much. But the whole system sounds amazing.
Do you run them on your stereo bus ever?
I haven't, but I have always thought about it. I know friends of mine would do that. They would put tone through them and kind of decide how much, since they're not, you don't know how many dB you're boosting and kind of adjust it that way. But I have not tried it. But maybe that's something you should try.
I like it.
Have you tried it? Yeah. Do you have some over at your place?
No, I don't. There's a new. Have you heard of Pulse Techniques? There's a guy, Steve Jackson.
Steve Jackson makes amazing ones. We're buddies. He's a friend of mine.
Okay, me too. So he
let
awesome
me demo.
Guy. I had him for about a month, and that was a couple of years ago. And then I also get a chance to rent them from. There's a place in Los Angeles called Design Effects. They have some pretty good.
I want to get some of his eventually, but he's done such a great job.
They're incredible.
I kind of feel like he kind of made him like the workmanship seems better than the original.
I would rather have a pair of his than a pair of vintage ones.
They're so pristine.
Absolutely, hands down.
Yeah,
they're incredible.
And he's one of the most caring guys about what he's doing.
The first time I plugged those things in, that's the first time I can remember in years being like, "Oh my gosh!"
Right.
Like,
I need this.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I'm a big in the box plug-in guy. That's part of my workflow. So,
but you have a console and stuff. Do you ever have I'm going to interview you for a minute. Do you ever like say you have a console and the outboard gears? Do you use that during mixing? Not so much. You really lean on the box.
Like, I would say about the last 2 years, not so much.
And
I'm traditionally I'm not an SSL guy. Just by the sheer nature of my
your exposure.
Yeah. So I'm a recording. I'm a all the stuff on the way in kind of guy, and then in the box for the rest. Right. Of the time.
Do you do stuff on the way in, or do you record it without any kind of shaping?
I do stuff on the way in.
I do too. I'm a firm believer in getting the sound on the record session and not waiting for mixing so
less
much.
Than I used to, but yeah.
Yeah, but I still do quite a bit.
I bet you mangle stuff. You look like the kind of guy that would just rip it apart.
Well, I don't think I go too crazy, but I do definitely do more than maybe a younger person might.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But I don't feel like I do anything bad. Like I'm not really big into distorting things. You wouldn't be doing this
for as long as you've been doing it. If you were doing anything bad.
No, you know what I mean. Like, I think I do a lot, but maybe try not to like make something that's not good sounding. It's hard, but. We were kind of taught, when you grow up in a tape scenario, right, you kind of predict what you're going to be dealing with down the road in the production process. So you're constantly thinking ahead. Mm-hmm. So the computer allows you to not think ahead if you're not careful, and then you have a whole ton of work to do before you can get to mixing, or even during mixing. Mm-hmm. Not that it should be pre-mixed, but at least like you should choose your guitar sounds early on, I think, and all that stuff.
So then you're a fan of committing to what you want?
Pretty much, yeah, as much as possible. Mm-hmm. I like committing to, especially with guitars, like committing the sound, not leaving too many other mics in the Pro Tools for people to choose from.
Right.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I also think that's good for another reason. When people start overdubbing and artists get ideas, it's really great to have sort of this repeatable sound that's good, that they're inspired by to do more, and they keep putting more parts on and stuff. And it gets to be a little unwieldy to have 3 tracks for every pass they're doing.
So you like to
I'll either combine them or just choose one of the microphones. I always put more than one up, but sometimes I'll just choose one that sounds the best and work with that.
I know.
Because I get frustrated during the mixing process. If I'm giving something to mix and there's 3 or 4 mics on everything, especially if it's a whole album, and I'll get to know that I like one of them best, and sometimes I'll just start not using them as a matter of course. I'll start deleting right away.
Right.
Either that or take some time to bounce things together.
On say you're doing a modern drum recording date, and it's let's say a pop rock session.
Okay.
How many microphones are you going to have on that 4-piece drum kit?
1. Look at Alex.
Alex is rolling his eyes. He's like, nope.
No, I use a lot of microphones. Don't always use them in the mix, but usually always a couple mic on the top of the snare drum. Top and bottom toms, and lots of room mics, and usually 3 mono mics that are pretty mangled up. Try to get a good sound or something interesting, some kind of breathing or pumping on the mono things, just to have in the hip pocket in case you want to use them. They're great for, fills and moments and things like that.
Favorite overheads?
I have to say that's between 451s and KM84s.
Okay, so small diaphragm condenser.
Yeah, generally, yeah. I'm not a big diaphragm condenser overhead guy. I'm not saying I'll never do that, but I just seem attracted to the little ones.
You have those 414 EB C12 guys here.
Which are great, yeah.
But yeah.
I just never got used to using a large diaphragm on the overhead thing.
Yeah. How about snare?
57 and usually SM81 or a 451 taped to it on the top.
On the top.
Yeah.
At the bottom.
441. Sennheiser 441.
Good taste.
Seems to be kind of already like you don't have to do anything to that on the bottom.
Yeah. That's what we had up today.
That's so great.
Tom's 421.
Yes.
Bottom?
Top and bottom.
And then room mics, you have a whole stable of things you can play with.
Usually use 6 U87s at least.
Okay.
I try to get 3 stereo pairs.
How many 87s are at this studio?
I don't know.
17
yeah.
U87s.
Yeah. There used to be a lot more, when power station
four
sounds.
old ones.
But yeah, there's a lot. Can never have enough condenser mics. But
How about electric guitar?
57.
By itself?
You know what? I'll take that back. 57 usually is always there.
Okay.
Lately, I've been into SM7 instead of, or as a choice, and maybe a 121 to mix together. But I tried not to do that.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know why. I like the way a Royer sounds, but I want to be careful. I'll make sure that I have enough clarity when it comes to mixing time, because that seems to be what we're always fighting for, is to have something that's clear enough in the mix. But I like the Royer mics a whole lot. I never end up using it, but I record it as
based on what you're saying, that sort of makes sense. Is the Royers aren't as present, and they definitely have a lot more body and bottom end.
I think they're more honest than most ribbon mics.
Yeah, if you're just listening to a guitar,
I think
you probably would like the 121. But
they're going to be the more faithful of all of them, I think. So I think they did an amazing job with those microphones.
But then once you stick a bunch of crap over top of it,
right? But I don't, we change. We fall in love with different things as time goes on. So you never know. Next week I might be like only using them, but. I tend to not mix mics together that much because I don't really like. I'm afraid of comb filtering a little bit because that's really hard to undo. So
and you're probably committing, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have to. I mean, maybe if I'm not going to mix it, sometimes I'll put it separate for the guy if he wants to check it out or something. But yeah, I tend to if the mic I'm choosing isn't perfect, then maybe I'll go address some amplifier settings or talk to the guitar player a little bit, and we work together to try to get something a little closer. If I feel like it's not great, then maybe we should. It's worth a conversation.
Right.
Sometimes a musician will just pull something out of their hat and go, "Oh, you mean this? Okay, great."
Yeah.
Okay,
vocal mics changes depending on the vocalist.
Yeah, I would say if. Desert Island, U47 for a lot of people. I tend to go more U67 for females, depending on what it is they're doing.
Okay.
I guess if I had to put it in technical terms, if I felt like I was reaching for a little more air, I'd probably go more U67 route than the 47.
Okay.
But I love how the 47 seems to pull in the space around the person a lot.
How about your 251 here? At Avatar?
Amazing microphone. I try not to use it because everybody wants to use it. So when I want to go to a punch on a vocal, then sometimes it's not available. So.
Right.
But if it was mine, I'd use it all the time.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
So that's the main reason that maybe I might not use the most,
because it's not as
because
you can't be as versatile with it either as well.
Or that, or just like I can't substitute something with it. I know if I use my favorite U67 here, I could probably get away with punching the vocal with one of the other ones. Or even an 87.
A little bit of EQ to kind of match it
up. Just whatever. And they'd get away with it, but the 251, I have to have that. So if somebody else has got it, then I might not be able to wait for it.
So here's a question I like to ask in the podcast. This is shifting gears. No, this is fun. This is fun. Now, you can take an out on this. You can be like, I don't have anything for you, Christian, or hit pause and I'll tell you a story or whatever.
Yeah, the crazy stories, man.
So I want to hear.
I was worried about this one actually because I know
I asked this on every podcast.
I know you asked it about it.
I just want to hear. I want to hear a fun story, crazy story. Something you experienced. I think you listened to a couple of the other podcasts.
I listened to 2 of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to hear whatever you want, or nothing. I mean, like I said, you can have an out if you want.
Or we can come back to it. I can think about it. But
yeah,
I liked Mark's the best. His was good. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
It's so funny. He's a great guy.
You can think about it unless you have something off the top of your head.
Yeah, nothing. I was in the car thinking I might be here answering this question, trying to figure out what can I actually really talk about.
Right.
But let me think about it.
Okay.
Maybe we can come back to it if I can conjure something up.
Are you what kind of things are you working on these days? Lots of different stuff.
All kinds of stuff. I mean, New York City's that way, and my thing has been really diverse. Mm-hmm. I've been working on this project with this guy, Nick Littlemore, who's from Empire of the Sun, mm-hmm. and super creative guys. Mm-hmm. And he's always doing projects with that project, and also on because I worked on their last record with them, mm-hmm. And other ideas that he has for music projects and stuff. And he's one of the people that I like working with the best because he's really creative.
Okay.
It's like letting everybody sort of get super artistic and creative, pushing themselves.
Right.
And loves great musicians and loves tons of gear and sort of discovering new sonic palettes and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I just finished mixing some stuff with them and recording a bunch of stuff with him.
Okay.
Doing that. So that's kind of been that's been my most fun thing I've been working on lately.
Yeah.
And then because we're doing it mostly
you'll probably change
analog.
Your mind as soon as this is over, but yeah.
Which that? Oh yeah, I might call you back.
Yeah. No, I think the favorite thing is now this. Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, it's hard to say.
It is.
In this climate, it's not just one kind of thing, and that things are coming from every direction now, mm-hmm. which is good because I feel like it keeps my chops able to shift gears at a moment's notice and then kind of get back, double back.
Right.
So I think mixing particularly is one of those things that you just have to do. It's like playing an instrument. You can't stop doing it because you get rusty too fast. So mm-hmm. you have to really just keep doing it every day. So
when you're in the box, do you have any favorite plugins?
I mean, it's funny. When I first started with the computer thing, since Waves was on the scene first, I always kind of wasn't really sure. But over the years, I've been really into the general
Wave stuff,
the Waves bundles, and I think it's really good. I mean, I'm really heavy duty with the Wave SSL 4000. I was, obviously, I'm using the consoles all the time, so I know the plugins are not the same exactly, and all that other stuff,
all that
right?
jazz,
but it worked for me really well. And as I started to work with them, and like they have so many plugins in their bundle, you don't really know what they're for or why they made them. Mm-hmm. I mean, we know what they do right across,
right.
Then I find more uses and more uses and more uses for them. So I feel like I really lean on them a lot these days.
I still use the Renaissance compressor quite a bit.
And that's a great one. That's people started, that was one of the early ones. And it's a really great tool, Mm-hmm. But I'm liking a lot of stuff. And it's funny, I feel like I discover new things all the time.
Yeah.
Reaching for stuff. I do a lot of audio suite things, to fix up things all the time.
Right.
And it's funny, I remember seeing this deep breath plugin.
Yeah.
And ignored it for years. And then I just figured I'd try it. And now I got a workflow with that. And it's amazing.
That's cool. Yeah. You've been at this for 33 years. That's awesome, man.
Thanks.
That's impressive. That to me is sort of the definition of success. At least one of them.
Doing it for a long time. I think so.
I think so.
I think what makes me the happiest is that I still really enjoy coming to a session or doing this.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't feel like drudgery or work or anything like that. It's like I'm really legitimately excited to do this, and I have new ideas every day. And I really enjoy people.
Most people, I think, don't necessarily have that same feeling, and that's awesome that you can say that about their jobs.
I'm really lucky. I feel like I got to learn in a different time period too, where I was learning around people and other engineers and producers. I learned a lot from a lot of people, and I wonder if people these days who are starting out, 20-year-olds now really have that sort of exposure to get in trouble and to get reprimanded and to be taught. Like there was a lot of people who taught me many things. I remember, Al Schmidt being a guest engineer here, and I was assisting him. And immediately he taught me, he was telling me things, teaching me things as he was doing his session, showing me a lot of things that I still use today, from everyone, Phil Ramone, like countless people really impacted like the way I work and the way I think and the way I interact with people. Man, there's a lot to know. There's so much to know.
You've worked with a lot of really cool people and people that have inspired me, in your career. And so let me shift gears just a little bit.
Sure.
Can I ask you some questions about success?
Okay.
I know it's a little off topic.
I'm not sure I know about success, but I'm happy to talk about it.
I think you do. I think what advice would you give to others who wish to sort of walk in your footsteps or become successful in the music world,
the professional world?
I think it probably applies across the board, but let's just say for the sake of argument in recording.
Well, there's so many aspects of that, but I would say what I consider important things to think about and to do is to always keep learning and always keep your head down and focus on what you're trying to learn and trying to do. Paying attention to the people around you is a huge thing, and trying to not be scientific, but like kind of, especially with artists and producers and other engineers and people you're working with, try to read them and see if they're comfortable or not comfortable, and really listen, and learn really great etiquette, those kind of things. A lot of that stuff, like, I don't think gets taught or known about, you know what I mean? Because like I said, people aren't learning these things. I got to learn because the guys I was working with saw shortcomings in me and kind of refocused me on some issues, So just, I guess if I had to pick one thing, it would be always be learning and always be practicing your craft.
Again, this might be tough to answer. What factors do you think led to your success? Because really, if you came from Albuquerque, which is not a big place.
No, there's like no music scene.
You came from Albuquerque. It's not a big place. I've been there. I've played shows there as a musician. I've toured through there.
Right.
Okay, so you came from to Manhattan.
Yeah.
That's a
pretty
serious
scary
joke. And then not only did you do that, but then you also became an engineer at Power Station and came through 33 years of the music business. That's a success. That's amazing. Those are some significant hurdles that many people in the world don't even let themselves approach, let alone try to climb over. So there's something. There's something that you've done. A lot of your peers have done that's maybe a bit different. And I'm curious what you might think it is.
I don't know. I think somehow I kept going. I mean, like, I never felt like quitting. I had a lot of friends.
So persistence.
Yeah, who did just decide they wanted, more money quicker, or stable money, or some other kind of thing, a family quicker, and those kinds of things.
Right.
I feel really lucky to be around some of the people I have been who sort of kept me on board in their productions and other things like that too. I mean, some of it is your network,
Yeah, absolutely.
It's huge, people like you. It makes all the difference in the world.
Right. So persistence.
I think persistence.
And probably grit, maybe?
Grit. Some grit. I mean, grit is a great thing, and people have only been talking about that.
Yeah.
At least that I've been seeing is fairly recent on the internet. I've been seeing people talk about it, TED Talks and things like that, and I love thinking about that grit and persistence, and all of that stuff is really important, especially now.
I think a lot of people don't try. I think that's one of the reasons you're successful is because you
think people don't try.
I think people don't try.
I do think you have to be. I think you have to be for sure, and like we never stop. This is never an easy job.
No,
that's I was talking with a Power Station buddy of mine the other day. If we're honest with one another, every mix is hard. Everything has aspects of it that are a challenge, right?
And I'm sure in your career there have been ego deflating moments that people level on you. You're just like, good.
I've had some things that people really laid on you.
Yep.
Meaningfully, or maybe even not meaning to. Sometimes they mean to hurt you, or whatever the case is.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's certainly plenty of assholes in this business.
Yeah. And yeah, you have to be ready. I mean, okay with weathering those things. Try your best to weather those things, and be prepared to fail. And it's
okay.
And
so
it's
be prepared to fail. Yeah. That's an interesting concept. So I think,
or I should say, accept when you do fail. You know what I mean? Like, be okay with that and know that it can happen. Like,
bingo.
I know you could do a mix or record something for somebody or produce something or work with an artist, and you just can't connect with them for whatever reason. Their taste is different, or maybe you did, for some reason, didn't do great on that particular thing.
Right.
It's hard to take when you know it didn't work, and it might be you or something you did or something you like. Maybe a sensibility you're missing for this particular thing, and you want to be to yourself the superstar guy that does it all.
Right.
It's really hard emotionally. Sometimes you got to be careful not to beat yourself up too much.
Right.
But no, it can happen. You know, so I think if you get yourself into a form where you think you're not ready for, or at least somewhere close to not being ready for, you could try to jump in anyway. Just know that. Don't worry if it doesn't work out.
So basically, and I agree with this. I agree with this concept. You sort of have to be okay with just failing, right?
Yep.
Like I think
so if you don't try, right. You never fail,
right?
But then you'll never find out how good you are, or you might be perfect, you know, but you might not know.
I'm one of those odd people that would say that failure is maybe a good thing.
Yeah,
because that means you're progressing.
It's the same learning. As limitation. I feel, you know, if you and I were making records with 16 tracks, and we just didn't have the option, we'd be fine. We'd be making great records.
I know.
You know, I mean,
like no good records have been made before there were infinite tracks, right?
Right. I mean, I listen to records all the time. I have a really funny thing I do is I listen to a side of vinyl or I do go buy random 45s, you know, just for fun. And I listen to stuff I know nothing about. And I know it was made in like 1970, so I know there wasn't, you know, like 48 track going on. And all these options for editing and stuff. And I'm like, that's amazing what they did. You know, like, I want to do that, you know. So I think the limitation really makes us think ahead and push ourselves and really, really think and focus early on in the game. So limitation is good for us, I think. In general, it's good.
I agree.
Helps us think.
I don't like playlists.
Right.
In Pro Tools. I want to make those decisions in the moment.
Right. You want to take it home the way it is, the way you want it to be.
Because that'll catch up to you in a bad way. And you'll end up with a day's worth of listening to playlists if you're not careful.
I know. Well, think about doing vocals. Do you use comp sheets when you record a singer?
No.
So I use comp sheets. I actually learned this from Phil.
I take notes, but I do it kind of in my
different
weird way.
Right?
Yeah.
But the idea is like, especially if you're
by the way,
producing
you learned
the
this
singer.
From Phil.
Yeah, Phil Ramone.
Phil Ramone, yes.
I mean, he's the one that sort of made it a really clear process for me. You know, he everybody who's worked with him, he uses the same way or did the same way. And some of the other guys I worked with would do something similar. But I spent a lot of time with him. So
can you tell us a little bit? Will you tell us what that is?
What that is?
What your system is?
The system? Oh, well, I could never figure out his handwriting. I would ask him sometimes, and he would sort of tell me. But basically, the system is, as you would think, you have a phrase in a sort of a spreadsheet layout. And we were doing it before spreadsheets, and then you have columns, right? And you have take numbers, right? So we might say 8. We'd have 8 columns for 8 takes. And then, you know, a row for each line, each musical phrase, right? So we split it up the way they sing it.
So you'd have the phrase written.
And then some check boxes on the right side, right?
Okay, like numbered?
Yeah, 1 through 8.
Okay.
So you have 8 possibilities. So I might, if I was organized that day, I might have them the same number as the playlist. But usually, but the cool thing about that is as someone's singing and passed down, you're marking off the good stuff or making some kind of note to yourself, whether it was flat or if you want to change their phrasing, you might make a note and point to the word or something.
Right.
The cool thing about doing that on the fly is you stop the tape or the computer, then you have feedback for the artist immediately without having to go play something back.
Right.
And then you get a rapport really fast. And then it's a good way to get a sort of a trusting line of conversation because they know you're listening to them in focus. So... and have real feedback because I think if it frustrates them,
because it's not about you. So you want to make sure that they understand that they know that it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and you could present it however you want. You say, did you hear this? How do you feel about this? I was wondering if you could try this other thing. And they might say, I meant that. Or like, oh, yeah, I heard that too. Or, oh, I never thought of that. But it's really cool to have the information right on the thing so you don't wind up sitting with them, if they're part of the process, listening to 20 playlists and trying to come up with a vocal that you could have had a lot sooner and actually come up with cooler things by sharing ideas.
Yeah, and they're getting frustrated by hearing bad takes. And
that too, and scare them.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that Phil would teach us would be like, don't play them a bad line. Because, we would be, in the tape days, right? Mm-hmm. We would be recording vocals on a console with a tape machine and taking multiple takes. Usually it was like 4 or 5 or 6 tracks maximum would be our... But we'd try to have a comp track that we would sort of make on the fly, but I would be running the tape machine because the engineer would do the punching then here in New York most of the time. And uncutting the channels to play back a live comp so the singer could hear the right phrases.
Okay.
So we wouldn't freak them out. And then punch in and make sure we had the right one open we were punching on. So
you didn't have any Control Z back then either.
No, so we couldn't undo it. We just had to admit we made a mistake and try it again.
Here's my water.
So, people knew that you could do that, so you didn't really get yelled at unless it was really impossible, something impossible to redo.
Right. Did you ever get yelled at? Did you ever get in trouble? You want to share something like that? Did you ever set an intern on fire? Did you?
No, man. I made a mistake once, though, where I ended up erasing a track, percussion track, where the studio owner had to pay for the guy to come back. So I was in pretty much hot water for that. I was young. I was just a new assistant then. And we're doing 48 track then, so we had a number of songs, and sometimes you get, how a 2-inch you could get 2 or 3 songs on a reel.
Right.
Then you'd have the master tape, and then the one that was synchronized up. We'd either call it a work tape or a slave tape or whatever. And somehow I put up the song. We were going to bounce a vocal before we started mixing, and I put the wrong slave up. And he was bouncing. The engineer was bouncing a track, and recorded over something,
and you lived.
And I'm not, to this day, I'm not really 100% sure it was my fault, but I really felt like I had to take the hit for that anyway.
Yeah,
it'd be bad. It would have been. I felt it would have been bad for him to say it wasn't my fault. So,
well, we're coming up. We're kind of coming up on our time.
Okay,
I'm just wondering if there's anything that you might like to touch base on. Any projects you'd like to talk about? Have you finished your sci-fi novel yet, or my
sci-fi novel? No,
or your I don't know, your autobiography?
No,
not working on a book.
I'll tell you. So after being doing this a lot of years, right? You must wonder if there'd be some artist who could walk in that would make you nervous, right?
Of course,
or at least make you feel like on your best behavior.
Yes.
I want to ask you, who would that be for you?
Actually, a lot of people. Yeah, it wouldn't. I haven't been doing it as long as you. So
the one that did it for me was Paul McCartney. I was recording that.
Well, that would be on my list. I think he'd be in the top 1. I
was recording that Rave On track that he did for the Buddy Holly tribute with his band, with the David Kahn producing.
Wow.
And I was the second time I met him, but still, when he walks in the room and he talks to you, he's such a nice person. Talks to you like you're a regular person. It's you still can't. I'm like I got to pinch myself. You're like really great. And then you hear his voice coming through the speakers, and it's funny when he went out there to sing. It was the whole band playing together. He's playing guitar.
What studio were you in?
Studio A. Okay. There's a picture of it in a mix online.
Okay.
And they count it off, and he starts singing, and everybody's smiling ear to ear. You can't help yourself.
Yeah. Hair's kind of standing up on your arms.
Yeah. And then I'm thinking to myself, I was listening to this guy. I remember listening to Hello Goodbye on a clock radio. My grandmother's clock radio as a little boy. I'm thinking, wow, that's the same voice. I'm so blown away. That would be a big moment for me because I never knew if I would get the opportunity to record Paul McCartney
for permanent.
Yeah, and everybody was amazing.
I've heard that Paul McCartney's. I've heard from a couple people that have met or worked with him that makes them feel instantly comfortable.
Yes. Yeah, he just talks. He was just talking like you were friends, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and really smart and really vibrant, you know. He's like I felt like he was 20, 25 years old, you know. He was really super vibrant.
I've never seen him live, and I hope I get the chance.
Yeah.
I can't believe I missed him. He was going around, was it like last year or the year before?
It's got to be a great show. I haven't seen the concert yet, but I'm sure
I've just heard you can't tell he's 70-something years old. I don't know how old he is.
I don't know how old he is.
He's in his 70s.
Yeah, I don't know how old he is, but yeah, he's been around a lot longer than we have, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's actually make a pretty good argument that we wouldn't be here in the studio without.
No, we were all, we think about how many of those records we were influenced by and things we do, emulating those.
Just the modern recording studio, even.
Yeah, the whole idea
really,
of the way they work.
Kind of this into existence.
They just
said,
amazing artists. And
damn the torpedoes. They didn't give a shit about failing.
No.
Right?
Yeah, right.
They were like, we can do whatever we want at this point, and somehow weren't that worried about it. Maybe that's why they were so successful. Also, they weren't playing to... Another thing that I think it helps people become successful or at least make good art is they weren't trying to do something for someone else either.
Well, I think that's that's funny you bring that up. Oh, that's actually really important. You said if I was going to kind of mention the point that was really important for somebody. One thing I learned in a young age here when I was engineering here, just beginning, I was still like just becoming an assistant, but I was doing at night demos with other artists here, you know, when like downtime. You know, like other people the studio had booked in and they just, you know, you want to engineer this. And I did that, right? I learned at a young age to really trust your instincts. Like, in other words, if you're working with somebody you know a little bit about or you heard about or whatever, try not to second guess what they're hearing too much. Make it sound the way you want it to sound. Let them kind of adjust what you've done. I felt like the minute I tried to guess what they did and I did what I thought their tastes were, which there's no way we can interpret that. Right. You know, we can, and it's some sort of, you know, a very loose level. But the minute you don't use your own sensibility, I felt like I would always get rejected a mix. Right. But the minute I made it sound good to me first, then it made sense to them. And that's because I felt like I'm actually listening and reacting to what I'm hearing rather than worrying about what I think they're hearing.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so it's like really about trusting your own instincts and sensibility as you learn, you know.
Instead of trying to
like guess what somebody's hearing. You know what I mean? I mean, there are some really loose things. You might know a guy doesn't like bass amps or something really, you know, so you won't do that anymore for him. But as far as balancing and mixing and making, you know, the whole
EQ changes and
all of that stuff, you got to trust yourself. Even if you don't think you're good, you'll get good by trusting yourself.
So trust yourself, persistence, grit.
That's it. Yeah.
Don't be afraid to fail.
Don't be afraid to fail. Because we're all going to be nervous. Your whole life, you're never going to be 100%.
Nobody actually has any clue what they're doing.
If you're 100% confident and you feel like you've done, then you're kind of done.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being on the podcast.
It was really nice to meet you.
I've had you in here for close to an hour, so I think it's probably time to sign off. You're awesome.
It was fun, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, for sitting over in the corner and laughing at us.
Right. Have a good one, man.
Yeah. That was the end. I went back just before I coughed. It fades out.
I'll note here, faded cough.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Do me a favor and swing by my website, christiancummings.com. Download some free stuff and sign up for the ATS mailing list if you haven't already. It'll give you access to giveaways, contests, and exclusive content that isn't part of the regular show. Also, thanks to Signature Sound in San Diego for facilitating some of our recordings. And by all means, share this podcast with your friends. Gotta say that. You can also find me on Instagram at christian.m.cummings or on Twitter, Here's Cummings. That's it. Talk to you next episode. Bye.